please put it for me in the chat box so that we can get to know you. I know you've already told us your expectations, so you don't need to repeat that, and your location as well. So tell me about your background. Can we have Aya? Okay, my name is OJ. I have some experience in IT support and software testing. Beautiful. Lovely to meet you. Lovely to meet you. Can we have others as well? We have Ayo, we have Esther, we have Mohammed, we have Adeshino Dolapo, we have Zainab, we have AM. AM, please give us your name. We have Justice as well, and we have S9 Desmond. So just give me your name and your background. What is your background? Are you from a tech background or non-tech background? Let's do that very, very quickly. Um, our class at Cloud Booster, our discussions are always very interactive. Okay, Mohammed, I have some experience in customer success. Very good. Thank you for sharing. Can we have other people as well? Very, very quickly. Just tell us your name and or just tell us your background. We know your name, we know where you're from already, and we just want to know your background. Yeah, my name is Dolapo, software developer. Nice to meet you, Dolapo, once again. Okay. Who else do we have on the call? Let me see. Esther, years of experience as a software engineer, front-end heavy, beautiful. We like people from different backgrounds. So that's another thing I'm already loving about this audience. So that's fine. Can we have others very quickly, please? Your backgrounds. Justice, a digital transformation leader. Beautiful. So I think I think it's safe to assume, or it's safe to say, that everyone here has some kind of background in tech. Okay, someone says, Zainab, I have experience in project management, and then Swadik, please, I hope that's correct pronunciation, is from Ghana, has experience in customer service. Okay, beautiful. Thank you all for sharing your background with us. It's just beautiful to know, so that we're not making any assumptions, and so that we're tailoring the conversation in such a way that is meaningful. Okay, so today, the purpose of this boot camp, just like most of you have said in your expectation, is really for you to have a feel of what we do at Cloud Booster, right? And how we support you. So one of the things that is very, very big for us at Cloud Booster is we like to understand where people are at on their journey, right? And we like to know how best we can actually take them to where they want to be. So it's not just that you just come on board and then you get lost in an audience. No, that's not it. We actually hold your hands. On the call today, I'm going to be the instructor teaching you today, but we also have facilitators who are also going to be guiding you on this journey. So just like just like we've told you, it's going to be a mix of lecture, and then it's going to be a hybrid. You're going to have lecture at some point, and then at some point you go into your breakout room and actually build your cloud solutions. And that's how it is generally at Cloud Booster. So some of you already have good tech background, so you know that the world of tech is practical. There's nothing theoretical. We will just come here and start teaching you about cloud, and then no. You're actually going to log in. You're going to create your AWS account. You're going to log into your AWS account, and you're actually going to build the things that we are sharing with you. Okay, so that's what the model is for today. So please stay tuned and enjoy. And if at any point in time you feel like you have questions, or maybe you feel like I'm going a bit too fast, please definitely let me know. It's important. The purpose of this is to ensure that you actually understand. So this is going to lay the foundation for you to know about cloud DevOps, and then for you to also know our model, our style, our Cloud Booster, and how we can support you. So please don't be distracted. Ideally, we like it when people turn on their camera, just so that we know that you're with us, because many things can come up and distract you in the background. But if you can't turn on your camera, just make sure that you're with us. When you're in the breakout room, you have to share your screen so that we can see what you're building. Okay. And yeah, we're looking forward to actually supporting you all through today. So let us get started. I'm just gonna share my screen now. I'm just gonna share my screen. So I hope you can see my screen. We are starting today with introduction to cloud computing. And immediately after the introduction, we would actually take one of the cloud computing modules as well, which is storage on the cloud. So you're welcome to your first lecture on cloud computing. Now, today we're going to look at what cloud computing really is. We're going to understand why you need to learn cloud computing. Why AWS, why Amazon Web Services. We're going to look at different types of cloud computing, and then we'll begin to look at the AWS global infrastructure as well. So what is cloud computing? Some of you may have heard this. You've heard people define it in many ways, or maybe you've even heard us at Cloud Booster talk about cloud computing, but it's really very simple. Cloud computing is a technology that allows users to access computing resources like servers, storage, databases, and application over the internet on a pay-per-use basis, right? I'm sure all of us have heard of pay-per-use model before, similar to getting a data subscription on your phone. Sometimes they'll say, do you want to do pay as you go, or do you want to buy a bundle, right? Depending on your usage, you will know which one works better for you. So what we're saying about cloud computing is that people, users, developers, end users can actually access computing resources. You can access storage on a pay-per-use basis. You can access databases on a pay-per-use basis. You can access application on a pay-per-use basis, right? Over the internet without the need for physical hardware. So every one of us uses cloud daily, whether you know it or not. But if you've ever used Netflix, or you use iCloud if you use an iPhone, or you use your Gmail if you have a Gmail, or you use Spotify for music streaming, or you even use Google search engine, all of these platforms actually leverage cloud computing, right? And you will get to understand better as we go along. So this image actually just shows you the things that you can access on a pay-per-use basis, right? So the model we're trying to sell when it comes to cloud computing is we're telling organizations, right, you don't need to actually go and buy all the servers that you need upfront. You don't need to go ahead and get all the databases that you need upfront. Sometimes you don't even know what you need, right? Instead of that, what we're saying is that access it on the internet on a pay-per-use basis. So basically, if you need to spin up a server, all you need to do is to get a public cloud provider that you like, maybe AWS, as we're going to be learning today, and then you create that virtual server on AWS. Run whatever application you want to run, do whatever test you want to do the data analysis you want to do, and then you delete the server once you're done with it. Or if you're going to use it for a period of 3 days, use it for that period of time, and then you delete the server. The life before that was that anytime you needed computing resources, you actually had to buy physical hardware. So cloud computing moves us from the model of using physical hardware to actually accessing all of those computing resources over the internet on a pay-per-use basis, which works out cheaper in this case. So you only pay for what you use, and then it makes life much easier, okay? So if you have ever wondered how Netflix manages over 220 million subscribers with millions of views in traffic every day, they leverage cloud computing. So Netflix is a media streaming company, right? They show, they are a hub for all sorts of beautiful movies, right? And instead of them to actually own physical servers, what they've decided to do is to actually let a public cloud provider handle the infrastructure side of the business for them. So all of their movies are actually stored on a public cloud provider. In the case of Netflix, they actually run on AWS. So that way, Netflix can focus on its core operation, which is to produce good movies, and they don't have to worry about, maybe their storage running out, or, people not being able to access a movie because, their server is down or something. I'm sure all of us have visited a website at some point before, and then you see server down or too much traffic on the website. Netflix doesn't want that. So instead of them handling the whole stress of the computing resources, because they must run on, even though they produce movies, right? All of a sudden, they've become a tech company because they need a lot of computing power behind what they're doing. So instead of them to start managing all of that by themselves, they just contracted out AWS. So anytime they have lots of movies, AWS charges them for just exactly what they're using, right? And if for any reason they want to remove some movies on Netflix, they want to do organization of their movies, they want to scale down from maybe 50 million movies to 5 million movies, it's whatever storage, whatever space the 5 million movies is taking on AWS that they pay for. So it just gives a lot of flexibility. Are we following so far? If you understand what I've said so far, please put a 1 in the chat box. If you have any questions, please give me a, if you're confused, give me a 2. Do you understand what we said so far? Put 1 in the chat box. If you feel like you're completely lost, you can give me a 2. If you feel like you're somewhere in between, you can give me a 1.5. Okay, I can see 4 people saying 1. I hope everyone is following. I need responses from everybody. Okay. Can we have more responses? Do you understand what we said so far about cloud computing? It's important that the foundation is laid properly. Very good. Okay, that's good. You can still keep your responses coming as I'm going along, okay? And as always, if you have any questions, put it in chat box. Someone may respond to you, or I can take the question, or I'll take it at the end. Now, having said that, we now have the biggest cloud providers globally, right? And there are 3 major ones. We call them the MAG, the MAG. So we have Microsoft Azure, we have Amazon Web Services, and we have Google Cloud Platform, and these are their logos. So some of you, maybe on your journey of exploring, do I want to do cloud? You may have come across this. You may even have certifications in it already. They're all very beautiful. They're all doing really well. These are the biggest public cloud providers globally. Of course, there are other ones that are following fast after them. We have Alibaba Cloud, we have IBM Cloud, we have all sorts of different cloud platforms. But these 3 are the biggest, right? And life before cloud had to do with if you wonder, just like I said before, if you wonder, how was life before cloud? Every organization had to literally have all these server rooms. Some of you have been in tech for many years, so you know what I'm talking about. Organizations have to have rooms where they keep servers. They have to have physical security features. They have to have their firewall. They have to have all of these things, and it's a whole lot of work managing it. You need land space. You need room space to manage all of this. But what we said is that move all your systems to the cloud, and then let the cloud provider handle all the headache of managing infrastructure, while businesses can focus on their core business operation. Okay, so now I'm sure you can already guess the advantages of cloud computing from the things that we have discussed. So organizations that are migrated to the cloud, they can now trade capital expense for variable expense, right? They can benefit from massive economies of scale, right? They can stop guessing about capacity, they can increase their speed and agility, and they can go global in minutes, right? So basically, trade capital expense for variable expense, they don't need to know all the money that they need to run their IT infrastructure from the beginning, right? They just pay for what they use on any of those major cloud providers that we discussed. And they can benefit from massive economies of scale, which means that the more they use, the less they pay. So if you're using a lot of so many things, the rate becomes cheaper and so on. They don't need to start thinking about their capacity up front. Most times, if you have to work with physical servers, then you need to actually give an estimate of what your capacity would look like when you're starting out, and you can estimate that, I want to build this website. I expect that 1,000 people will log on to my website, and all of a sudden you blow on plan, and you have 100,000 people logging onto your website. If your website cannot handle that traffic, what will happen is that you will see server down or some kind of error message on the website. But with cloud, build your website on the cloud, and then automatically there is a lot of scalability features in the cloud, right? So whether you have less users than you anticipated or you have more, in any case, cloud can handle it, and you only pay for the amount of users that are accessing your website. It is so revolutionary, so beautiful. With cloud, you have increase in speed and agility, right? Because you're not managing physical data centers. You're not limited by, this server can only handle this number of people. There's a lot, because there's elasticity on this, there's infinity on there's infinite storage on the cloud, so you can access and you can use it, and there's increase in speed and agility, right? You can easily respond to changes, and then you can easily go global in minutes as well. So you can build an application today, and then you're able to actually deploy it to China. We have different regions in AWS, in any of the cloud platforms. You can deploy it to different environments. So it's really, really beautiful. Other advantages that you can tell from what I'm saying: efficiency and cost reduction, right? There's automatic software updates and integration on the cloud. There's scalability, just like I've said. There's unlimited storage capacity, and there's a beautiful way to handle disaster as well on the cloud, right? So Imagine if you're managing physical data centers and it gets a natural disaster, it gets burnt down. What's going to happen? You're going to lose your data because you just have it in a physical space. But on the cloud, there are ways to manage disaster, which you'll get to learn about on your cloud computing journey. So why do you need to learn cloud computing? Apart from all those beautiful advantages and the fact that organizations are moving their data to the cloud, the cloud computing market actually moved from a $97 billion market in 2019 to a $217 billion market in 2022. And it's projected that even by next year, 2026, we're going to be expecting the market to be about $947 billion market. What does that mean for you and I? It means that cloud is the future, number one. It means that there'll be more job opportunities. So whether you're on the side of the cloud provider, Amazon Web Services, AWS, or Google Cloud Platform, they need cloud engineers, right, to help manage the cloud infrastructure that they're providing for organizations. And even if you work in a business, an e-commerce business, a Netflix, or whatever it is, they also need cloud engineers that understand how their infrastructure is actually, being developed, how their infrastructure sits on the global platform. So I've been on both sides of it. I've been in this industry for over 7 years now. So I've worked as a consultant, I started my career in Accenture UK. I've worked as a consultant where, we're helping organizations to actually build their cloud solutions. We're the ones doing the migration, we're doing all of that. And then I've also worked in in financial services as well. I used to work in Accenture, then I moved to Capital One, now I'm in PwC. So at Capital One, they're actually a financial services company. They help with credit cards and things like that. So as an end user, they also were running on AWS. But I was a cloud DevOps engineer there as well, because we're helping to still manage, the infrastructure that was there. So there's so many opportunities. Either you're working in the industry where they're leveraging cloud computing, or you're working with the cloud providers and, maybe you're even innovating. We have instructors at Cloud Booster who are working in AWS, right? And they are at the front end of even thinking of better innovations for cloud computing, for AWS, for Microsoft Azure. So the opportunities are there. You could be a consultant, for me now, I'm a cloud DevOps manager at PwC. So most of what I do, I manage cloud migration projects, help other junior engineers to, help to do the migration project. You lead it, and there's a lot of speaking to organizations as well. Cloud sales is also there, where you're talking about the benefits of cloud. We help organizations also reduce cloud spend as well. So as much as we're saying move to the cloud, we also need to make sure that you're not spending too much money on the cloud. So what that means for you and why you need to learn is that there are more opportunities. There is a need for more skilled professionals, right? Either way, organizations need people who understand cloud computing and can help them implement it. Okay, so, and that's it. And then let me just touch briefly. I had spoken to you about Microsoft, about the biggest cloud providers, which are Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform. We teach AWS because AWS has the biggest market share, right? And also they actually were the ones that started this whole journey of cloud computing. So they are leaders in the industry. They have the biggest market share as of now, and they have more services, more innovation with AWS as opposed to the other ones. Microsoft Azure is coming fast after AWS, and things can easily change. The tech world is very versatile, so you never can say, oh, someone is leading today and they continue leading. But one thing I always say is this, right? If you learn one cloud platform, you can apply it to the other ones. So what I've been talking about at the beginning, sometimes I refer to AWS, but I'm talking more generally about cloud computing. The concept is the same across board. So even if you start your journey, because people ask us this question a lot, we say start by learning one cloud provider first. And we recommend AWS, like I said, they're leaders in the market. They have more services, they have more things. Most things like AWS are the same as what they have in GCP and Microsoft Azure. They just call it different names. But once you understand cloud computing, you can apply that knowledge across board. So we say learn one first. So we teach AWS because they have more services. They're leaders in the market as of now, right? And we keep checking and innovating. If we ever consider that it's more relevant to learn a different one, we would always move in that direction. But right now we teach AWS, and we recommend that everybody starts with one cloud provider so you don't get confused. When you understand it very well, you can start trying other ones as well. Now, talking about AWS specifically now, so we have what we call the AWS global infrastructure, right? And within the global infrastructure, we have what we call an AWS region. So AWS actually has a presence across different regions geographically. So an AWS region is actually a geographical area in a country that AWS has a presence. At the moment, AWS is not present everywhere, but there are specific countries, there are specific geographical areas within countries that AWS has a presence. So if you check this particular website, it's AWS Global Infrastructure website, and you would see that as of today, AWS actually has 37 regions globally. So AWS is you can see this image here. They're present in Cape Town, they're present in Ireland, they're present in London, we have North Virginia region, we have different places, there's Sydney, there's all sorts of regions all across the globe. These are geographical areas where they actually have a presence. AWS doesn't have a presence in Nigeria yet. Hopefully they will do. If you look at Africa, they actually have just one presence in Cape Town, right? But again, these things keep changing. 7 years ago, they had just, maybe 25 regions or 22 regions. Now they have 37 regions. And AWS will always tell you that, oh, these are the regions that we're looking to to have a presence yet and all of that. And of course, if you're building a solution for people in that region, I'll tell you the things that you will consider, right? Where you want to be, where you want to choose a region. But it's just for you to know that there are geographical areas across the globe where AWS has a presence, and this applies to other cloud providers as well. We also have, within the global infrastructure, we also have what we call AWS availability zones. So availability zones are isolated data centers located within specific regions, right? And this helps to ensure cloud customers have a stable connection to a cloud service in a geographical zone that is closest to them. So I know you're seeing some physical computers right here, and really, some people will tell you that even as much as we're saying cloud computing, right? It's not as though there are no physical infrastructure that we're handling. It's just that we're saying that let the physical infrastructure be handled by the global cloud providers. So Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, they all have all these things that look like server rooms, right? They all have what we call data centers that holds all those servers, right? So they have all of that in different parts of the globe. And the whole idea of saying that, we don't want you to manage physical servers, let the public cloud providers do it, is such that they handle all the headache that has to do with physical data centers. And then you subscribing to their data centers actually means that you are using cloud computing, right? So people tell you that there's no such thing as the cloud, it's just somebody else's computer. That whole thing has come from the fact that the global providers, the cloud providers actually have all these physical things that they're managing, but you as the end user, you're not having to manage that. It's just like I give the example of Google Drive all the time, right? If you have an image, you have it stored on your laptop, and then it's taking up space on your laptop, right? You decide that you want to upload that image to Google Drive. You're actually using the concept of cloud computing, because that way you've uploaded your file to Google Drive. It doesn't have to be on your laptop anymore. As long as you have access to the internet, wherever you are, anywhere in the world, as long as you can log into your Google account, you can actually access that file. But that file is being stored somewhere, right? It's being stored on Google Cloud Platform, wherever their physical infrastructure is somewhere across the globe. So we have what we call availability zones, right? And these are isolated data centers located within specific regions. So as much as AWS has its regions, the 37 regions, within those regions, we have what we call availability zone. So a region can be London, for example, and then within London, you can have 3 availability zones, right? And those 3 availability zones can be, North London, South London, East London. In all of these areas within London region, you actually have isolated data centers. So these data centers, you have one data center here that has so many servers. You can have another data center somewhere in South London that has so many data centers, right? And that's how they serve the globe with cloud computing services. So this helps to ensure that cloud customers have stable connection to a cloud service in a geographical zone that is closest to them, right? So it just helps with stability. So this is what I was saying about disaster recovery. So in a situation where you stored your data in you decided that you want to build an application and you chose London region, right? They will ask you how many availability zones, which availability zones do you want? So the fact that you can choose availability zone, you can decide that this app that I'm building, I want to deploy it both on North London availability zone and South London availability. These are just examples, by the way. So if you deploy it on those two availability zones, what happens is that if for any reason there's natural, the only thing that really can affect these data centers is really, it has to be a hurricane or a serious natural disaster, right, that can really bring these things down. Ideally, they've been built to be so fault tolerant. So if anything happens and North London zone goes down, right, the beautiful thing is that your application is deployed on two availability zones, so your application will still be there. That's what we mean by disaster recovery being super with cloud computing. And there are many other mechanisms that you can use to preserve your data. When you get into the course, you will get to know all of these things in details, right? There's so many ways you can preserve things on the cloud, but it's just beautiful for you to know that these things are available. So we have region, just like I said, we have availability zone. Region is a geographical location, like London, and then availability zone is a building with tens of thousands of servers, right? Each AWS region has two or more availability zone, and availability zones consist of a data center or groups of data center, right? That's what we have there. Now, how do you determine your AWS region? You know that I had mentioned that AWS doesn't have a presence everywhere. So one of the things that you need to think about is your data sovereignty laws, right? This is very, very important. As much as you're a tech professional, the laws apply to you. So you need to think about, are there restrictions around where your data can reside? Are there any federal requirements, right? Because, for example, in the UK, for example, there are lots of GDPR laws. There are lots of rules around where UK residents' data can be saved. And even, data that is gathered in the UK, what you can do with it. There's so many laws around GDPR, so if you want to build a solution for the UK, for example, you need to think about, are there actually restrictions around, where we can store data? So if there are restrictions, you just have to make sure that you choose an AWS region that complies with that. This applies a lot when you're dealing with federal governments, when you're dealing with financial services. They are very particular. I remember back then when we were selling the concept of the cloud. This was in 2020, 2021. When we were trying to sell the concept of the cloud to banks, to governments, and they will say we have the most confidential data. We can't just keep our information somewhere that we don't know. What are you guys talking about? Right. And anyway, over time, we've been able to convince them that your data is actually secure. So you have to think of latency to end users as well. Where are the majority of your end users? So for example, even if you're living in Nigeria, you want to deploy an application for people that are in China. You can't choose Nigeria region just because you're there. We don't have a region in Nigeria, and I'll come to that. So you have to think of latency. What's the closest region to the end users? If your users are in China, then you have to choose regions close to them. In a situation where AWS doesn't have a region in the particular country that you're building for, then you have to choose one that is closest to them. So in Africa, for example, we have the Cape Town region. So anything that you want to do in Africa, you can use the Cape Town region. And then you also have to consider AWS services. What region have your required services, right? At the moment, US East 1 has the most AWS services. Every time AWS releases the service, they deploy it in AWS EU US East 1 first. So you have to consider that the services you're working with actually have a presence in that region. And then also you need to think about price. So these are factors that you use to determine which AWS region am I going to pick, knowing that AWS has 37 regions, okay? Pricing varies from region to region, and AWS is very transparent about it. So you need to think about it as well. If one region is more affordable for you, then you choose that region as opposed to another one. And then finally, we also have what we call AWS edge location. So for the edge location, this is the final thing I'm going to explain. This is also another way that AWS is able to make itself available more globally. So an edge location is an endpoint that is used to cache or store content, right? So let's say, for example, you live in Australia and you want to access a file that is based on an AWS website that is in London. So what happens is that because you're the first person from Australia trying to access that file, what happens, there's something we call latency, right? That's the distance between when you've sent a response and then when you get the response back. So because Australia is far from London, by the way, whoever is accessing this website doesn't know what is going on. I'm explaining this from a cloud engineer perspective. So you live in Australia and then you want to access a video file that is in an AWS website in London. So what happens is that the person in Australia that accesses that file, right? Once they access that file in London, what happens is that if you're using this feature, this edge location feature, or you're using AWS content delivery network, right, which you get to know more about as you enter the course, right? So what happens is that that file actually gets cached in a location in Australia. So because the time it takes for someone in Australia to actually get a response back from London is longer than if the person was accessing a file in Australia. And this time, this difference I'm saying is in milliseconds, right? It can just be 100 milliseconds versus 10 milliseconds. So what happens is that that file will get cached in somewhere in Australia. So what happens is that any other person in Australia that needs to access that file, they don't need to start accessing it from the London website. They don't need to start accessing it from the London region. They can now access it from an edge location in Australia. So AWS now has all of this, all of these servers in different parts of the world, all of these different edge locations that are used to cache content. So it actually happens. So that's how AWS is able to cover more ground. So even though they don't have large data centers in some countries, they can have an edge location there. And anytime somebody accesses an information from somewhere far away, it just gets stored in that particular edge location. So any other person within that region that needs to access it, they can easily access from that edge location. So that way, AWS has over 700 edge locations. So while AWS has 37 regions, and within those 37 regions, they have about 117 availability zones. So because each region has 2 or 3 availability zones, right? They now have over 700 edge locations. So that way, edge locations are used to actually get content closer to the end user, and it's for better performance. Because anything that has to do with distance, sometimes it may be irrelevant if the information you're trying to access is little. But by the time we're talking about gigs and megabytes and petabytes of data, you're trying to download something really large from somewhere far away, you would notice the difference as an end user that, latency is very important. So edge location helps to actually handle that. So you have you have all these regions. The regions are, the yellow ones, and then you have all these edge locations in blue. So you can see that with edge locations, you have the AWS has more grounds across the globe. Okay. Do you have any questions? That brings us to the end of the first part of my lecture today. Just introducing into cloud computing. There's still a lot more, right, about cloud computing, but this lays the foundation for you. So we've talked about, what cloud computing is. We've looked at the advantages of cloud computing. We've talked about why you should learn cloud computing. We've talked about why we teach you AWS. And we've also looked at the AWS global infrastructure, which has the regions, the availability zones, and the edge locations. Do you have any questions? Any questions at all? Any questions? Asking question means that you've been following. If you don't have any questions, I'm wondering, I hope you guys are not sleeping. It's Saturday, it's morning. It's just almost 10 a.m. Do we have any questions? Let me see. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, someone is saying, can I explain again why AWS are not Azure? Bear in mind, I'm talking about our preference for Cloud Booster. I'm not saying generally. So if you want to learn Microsoft Azure, I'm just trying to clarify, you can go ahead and learn it, that's fine. Because whatever it is that you learn about Microsoft Azure, you will be able to apply that knowledge to AWS as well. Why we are Cloud Booster teach AWS is because AWS has the most services across all of them. And then AWS also is the biggest. They're the first to start. It's easy to learn, actually. AWS is quite easy to learn. Their documentation is very user-friendly. Those are the things that we have considered, and we've said, let's teach AWS. But, there are people who have actually learned AWS from us, and they've gone ahead to get Microsoft Azure job. You can get a job with Microsoft Azure with your AWS certification, because everyone in cloud computing understands the fact that it's the same thing. It's just different lingua. So the same way you have storage in AWS, you have it in Microsoft Azure. The same way we have virtual machines, we call our virtual machines in AWS EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud. Microsoft Azure, they will call them virtual machines, right? So it's exactly the same thing. It's just, what is the name that AWS calls this? What's the name that Microsoft Azure calls this? I know people as well who who had Microsoft Azure certifications, actually, I think, well, one of our instructors, Shola, he had like 3 Microsoft Azure certifications, and with that, he was able to get a job in AWS. So now he works in AWS. Do you see? Without an AWS. So the point is that these things are interchangeable. Okay. So Dolapo, I hope I've answered your question. All right. Thank you for confirming. Do we have any other questions? Ayo, any questions from you? Toba has said doesn't have any questions. So let me see. Mohammed, do you have any questions? Esther, Zainab, AM, I haven't heard from you today. Mimi, any questions from you? Swadik, any questions? Oje, I don't know if it's Oje or OJ. Justice, Frank, any questions? Okay, Zainab has a question. 1 second, Zainab. Frank is saying, is this course applicable for solutions architects? Yes, yes, because at the end of your course, you know, we encourage you to actually part of your training, you should take your solutions architect exam, right? So the modules that we're exposing you to gives you the opportunity to also think as an architect. There's no defined, we don't define exactly what your career path needs to be after you do your training with us. People finish their training with us and then they explore different paths. We just explore it to different options. Some people have finished their training with us, they've gone ahead to be solutions architects. Some people have gone ahead to be platform engineers. Some people have gone ahead to get their DevOps job. Some people have gone ahead to do different things, right? But this lays the foundation and just gives you an entrance into the market. And we say don't limit your opportunities, when you're trying to explore a job opportunity. So yes, it's applicable. Frank. Zainab, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, good morning. I don't want you to be the only one talking, so I decided to join
Thank
you.
you. Thanks for helping me.
So my question is about the AWS Edge location. I'm a bit confused about it. Yeah. I understand you said that you used Australia and London, saying that, take for instance, the software is built in London and somebody in Australia needs to assess it. Once the person in Australia has assessed it, then Australia becomes an edge location. Yeah. So it literally has to mean that the country assessing it has to have a data storage, right? As
Yes.
yeah, and then does it happen automatically, or is there going to be like a coding, or how does it happen?
Okay, that's a good question. So it depends on how you as an architect have set up your website. So if you set up your website and you say, you know what, for this particular website, I want to use Amazon Content Delivery Network to deliver this website. I want to use services like AWS CloudFront and all of that, which you get to know later. If you have decided that I want to actually enable this feature that allows, what I've described, then that's when it's going to be activated. So it doesn't happen automatically that, every single time, once you've built your website somewhere, once somebody accesses it and all of that, it doesn't happen all the time. That's the first answer. So it depends on how you as an architect have thought about your solution. It may be a big deal for you that you don't want a situation where people from different countries are accessing your website and it's taking them longer to access it. So you can decide that, you know what, I want to actually use this. I want to use CloudFront. I want to enable this feature such that, the data always get cached in the locations that access it. Okay, so look at the edge locations like mini servers in different parts of the world, right? So it's not automatically enabled. It depends on how you want to build your solution, because again, as an architect, you need to always think of benefits and costs, right? What am I trying to achieve? How much is it going to cost me? If you enable this feature, you're actually going to pay more. So how valuable is it for everybody from all over the world to be able to access my data very quickly? And like I said, what we're talking about is just a little bit of time difference. It's not like it's significant, but bear in mind there are still some use cases for that. So when it comes to tech, when it comes to IT, when it comes to cloud, tech generally, there's no one size fits all. You just have to think about it. You can have a use case where you've deployed a website for a particular organization and they've said that, you know what, as large as this website is, no matter who is accessing it from wherever they are all over the world, we don't want them to take longer than 1 millisecond to actually load this page. That may be the requirements. And in that case, you know that you must enable it because we have something that can help in that case. But if there's no restrictions like that, you're flexible, then you don't need to use it. It's just for you to be aware that there's such a thing like that that can actually make that can make content being delivered to different people faster. Okay.
All right,
So
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much. So let's just take a very short 10 minutes break and then we'll come. And this is what we'll do after harvest as well. And then we'll come back and then we'll do the second part of the lecture. And then you would go ahead and have other exciting things like your lab, your quiz, and all of that. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mimi. All right, guys. So we'll be taking a quick break, like Mimi said.